welcome everyone to our team and culture Q&A session. We will spend approximately 1 hour and a half together, and each you will have the opportunity.
Not just with me 1 hour and a half.
No. To ask Mada Seghete, who is the co-founder of the San Francisco-based Unicorn branch, Joe Leach, trusted coach and advisor, and David Bizer, director at Key Search. Anything that is top of mind for you on these two pretty broad subjects, I would say. My name is Sonia Damian. I'm the head of platform and community at Crew Capital, a venture capital company founded by Daniel Dines, who is also the founder of UiPath. And we invest in early stage technology startups. I will start each session with 1 or 2 questions on my side. So please ask also your questions, because that's the scope of the session, and that's why we brought these amazing speakers in front of you. Now, Mada, thank you for joining. I'll make a brief intro about you, and then we can start. I know you're the co-founder, managing director, marketing leader of the mobile linking platform branch. You are also an investor, writer, podcast host, speaker, and community builder. Hopefully I haven't forgot anything. And since 2014, Mada has been leading branch marketing and evangelism efforts across the globe. She's also the keeper of the culture and has scaled the company from scratch to over $4 billion today.
Valuation, not revenue, unfortunately.
It doesn't matter. It's still a great
It matters.
success.
It matters.
So welcome, Mada.
Thank you. Merci.
Piacere. How did you initially enter in the entrepreneurship world? What motivated you to continue? Because this is not your first endeavor. And what led you to build Branch?
I don't think I grew up thinking I was going to start a company. I ended up getting a scholarship, going to the States, and even in undergrad, I think I took an entrepreneurship course, and it felt like it was like a game. I was like, I never thought I could start a company. And then I ended up, my visa got denied, so I had to go to school, and I ended up at Stanford. And the design school was getting started. It was their first year, so I took the first ever D-School class. And there was this professor, and I remember we worked with all the startups, and I was like, oh my God. I remember telling my professor, who was also an investor, Michael Deering, just like, these guys are so cool, and they build companies, and I don't think I could. And he just put his boxes down, and he was like, well, if you don't, who do you think will? And that was the moment. I was like, maybe I should start a company one day. And that was the beginning. And then it took me 5, 6, 7 years. I went and worked for a startup, learned a lot, and then I ended up at business school, and I was looking for the people who are working, when I would come back from parties, the people who are coding in the MBA lounge at midnight on a Saturday. So I convinced Alex to work with me. So I wrote him this long email of why I am the perfect co-founder for the company he was starting, which was Fitbit for dogs. So, yeah.
Nice. As the company grew, how did your perspective as a co-founder and also your responsibilities change? And what challenges did your team encounter when, set in the face of a new stage of the company?
It was rough. I don't know. It was, I think you hear about starting companies, and it sounds so sexy and wonderful. And I remember in business school at Stanford, every single person who came, most of classes in business school are entrepreneurs coming and speaking about case studies, and everyone's always winning and succeeding, and everyone's so successful, and it sounds so glamorous, and it's not. I wish more people talked about how hard it is to start companies, and how heart-wrenching and the toll it has, especially if you And I think it sounds like you always think, oh, but like we're going to raise an A and everything's going to be easier, and then we're going to raise a B, and then it's like a video game where like each level is hard, and then you beat the boss and you're like, oh, but like the next level is going to be easier. No, the next level is harder in a different way, and I think it gets harder and harder, and it never stops. I think, you think, oh, one day I'm going to IPO, and I have friends who IPO their companies, and it's even harder afterwards because you are like a slave to the public markets. So I think I had to learn how to take care of myself, I would say. It took me like 5-6 years. I think we were all working so hard in the early days, and there were no weekends. I lost a lot of my friends. I can think of so many birthdays and weddings and things I didn't go to because all I did was work. And then again, it comes to a point where you're like, is this actually worth it? Debatable. I have friends who started companies and worked for 10 years, and they killed themselves, and they made nothing in the end. So I think it's like if you start a company, you have to do it for the journey, not for the fame or money or glory, because I think a lot of that is luck. So much of like where Branch is today, a lot of it was, dependent on the changes that Apple introduced in the market. And I know companies that were killed by Facebook. So I think it's just hard. And I think you have to do it for the right reason. I also think it's very important to, like, the only thing you have when you're a startup versus a big company is your ability to adapt, which is much faster. Like, bigger companies take much longer to adapt to changes into the world, the industry. I think you see so many AI companies coming now. I mean, all the big companies are also going to build AI stuff, but like it's taking them longer. So if you can do it faster and better, you have a chance of actually being bought or succeeding. So I think it's my goal is to make sure that when people start a journey, they go in with eyes wide open instead of thinking it's the most glamorous thing in the world. And I know it might sound down, but yeah.
Thank you for that personal, I would say, answer, because it's not easy for everyone to share and be vulnerable and recognize all the things. What about the team? I mean, when you're in a startup, it's like super early stage, everyone is there, is working, but as you grow and mature, obviously you bring new people, new changes, processes on top of it. And I personally observed there sometimes is a clash. How did they adapt, and what would you advise also other founders to keep in mind?
I mean, I think as founders, the hardest thing, I think more experienced founders who start companies have a much higher chance of success because they know how to manage people. I think when we started, I had never managed people before, and then you're taken from like, we raised millions of dollars and we hire a team, and I do not know what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm doing in my job, and then I don't know what I'm doing as a manager. So I think the best thing you can do as a founder is to not like to really like understand that people management is a skill and an art, and to invest in it. And I think one of the regrets I have is that I wish I had done it earlier. And I wish, we ended up bringing companies in who train people how to be better managers. And it's not just the founders. You start and you have these people and they do work and they are really good individual contributors. And then as you grow, you hire more people. And then you're like, oh, but you were really good as a developer. Now you're an engineering manager. And like that doesn't necessarily mean that they have the skills. And I think a lot of them have the potential, but you have to train them. So I think as you grow, I think it is actually very important to continue up-leveling your team. It's important to understand that there's a big difference between a people manager and a leader. I think founders tend to be good leaders. Like they inspire people, they're able to raise money. I think me and my co-founders were good leaders, but I think we really lacked as people managers, and took us some time to get there. And bring experienced people who can help you there. And I think the other thing that I think when you think about the team, and I notice this with a lot of people, is like you have such high expectations of the people you hire. and you think everyone's going to work as hard as you, and you're like, oh, but why aren't they working right now? And I think at the end of the day, instead of being frustrated with people, which I've seen many founders do, you have to understand that it's your job to make those people motivated. And like, if they're not working at 7 p.m. or on the weekend, it's you didn't do a good enough job. Everything is on you, and you're never going to find people who are as like, I remember one time I was very frustrated. I was like, oh my God, these people just they don't care as much. And Alex, my co-founder, was like, Mada, your equity is 1,000 times more valuable than theirs. How can you expect, like, do you think you're 1,000 times more productive than they are? And I was like, oh, okay, that's a good point. I should. But I think your job as a leader and a founder is to find the people, find what they're good at, motivate them, and not expect crazy things. Make sure that you like really find the lever in each person and you get them to do the right job, and you don't have like expectations of them that are, crazy in the early days.
Yeah. And I think it's about caring back as well.
And caring about people. I think I learned that, if you care about people and who they are as people, they will go way further for you and your company than if you just treat them like numbers or, yeah.
Questions for Mada? Coming.
You mentioned that you realized that promoting people from individual contributors to people managers maybe wasn't the best choice at that time.
No, I think it's just promoting them without teaching them how to be
helping
yeah.
them. Right. Your awareness about this means that there were some signs that this was happening, that they didn't have the support. I'm curious, which were those signs, and also what did you do later on about them?
Yeah, I mean, I went through it myself, and I've also seen many people at Branch doing this. A very good individual contributor who gets promoted to manager, their hardest thing is delegating. They think they can do, and I was that person, they think they can do everything better, and they have a really hard time giving up control. And when something breaks, instead of them being like, oh, who can jump in and they go in and they jump and they fix the things themselves. And they don't give a lot of, they usually don't give a lot of like freedom to their team. They need to approve everything needs to go through them. Versus experienced managers learn how to let go, how to have, it's always good as a manager to make sure you like look for things, but I think you can have way smaller and way less like check-ins. So those are usually the signs that I've seen. They care so much, right? Like an amazing individual contributor usually got there and got promoted because they was amazing at their job. But I think the skill to trust others and let go is very different than like what it took to be an incredible IC. So, yeah. Yeah, I mean, we hired a few different companies who come in and do manager trainings. And I took the manager training, and I remember being like, oh my God, I'm learning so much about like how to trust people, how to give feedback. And it's not like it doesn't solve everything. Someone going through a manager training doesn't solve everything, but at least it starts the change. I think the other big thing that I did that was for me, like probably the most transformational thing as a leader was I did this this 360. I had a coach, and I think people were like, I don't know, Mada's hard to work with. So I was like, okay, let's do this 360. So I had a coach, and she interviewed 15 people throughout it was like my co-founders, people who reported to me, people in other parts of the organization, my mother, a founder I invested in. So it was really all sides of my life. And then each person was like an hour, and like, man, it was rough hearing. And then she put things, and I had to write down all the critical feedback that people gave me for hours. And it really like stuck with me. And I remember being like, I had to internalize that, wow, I am really, and she asked for the impact. So it's like when Mada gets over, I think I had 10 direct reports and I was overwhelmed. She's like, when Mada is overwhelmed and doesn't reply to emails, I can't do my job. And I was like, shit, now I'm going to make sure I reply to every email, right? So it's like when you hear the impact of something like that and you can see how, I knew I wasn't always replying to emails, but it's just like hearing the impact and seeing it written and having to write it down. I think it's like, I think this was maybe 5 or 6 years ago. I think I did change a lot. And if you read that 360 versus the 360 I did 3 years later, it's like very hard to believe it's the same person.
Okay, let me give some context first to my question. I represent Software Mind. I hope this rings a bell for you. Because we are partnering actually with Branch. We are one of the suppliers. But our colleagues from Poland, Software Mind.
Oh, yeah. Okay, got it. Discovery, Polish team.
Yeah, exactly.
Great.
But I represent Romania, Moldova branch. Basically, my question is kind of related with that. How do you, because as you grew, you needed to add more people, and not all of them were hired, like we just explained in the context. How difficult was and is to work with partners? What's important in what you look on for in a partner to fit with your team?
Well, in the case of, if I'm thinking correctly, the Polish team, we actually treated them as employees, meaning we just didn't consider they were partners. They went through the same onboarding. I did the same talks on culture. They got the same swag. They came to all the offsites. So if it's, and I dealt this, it was kind of the same with marketing. We had these contractors in India, and it's very hard to fire people in India. So I think the way we did was like, well, we'll start the contractors, then maybe move to full time. But we just treated them as employees. They come to all hands. So I think if you're going to have people who are going to work most of their time and spend a lot of the time in the company, you want them to have the same values and kind of believe and understand the vision of the company and be bought in. So I think they want some value words. I think that we just treated them as regular employees, because I think otherwise you build this world when it's like us versus them, and we just really didn't want that. And like my team, I remember Dimitri, my co-founder, went and visited them and worked with them for a while. So I think it's just, you have to not create those divides. I know companies like Google or something where if you're a contractor, you're like a second-class citizen. And I think it's just really important. I think if you start doing that, those people are not going to be as motivated, work as hard. So you can find a way to make them feel part of your team and treat them as much as possible as someone from your team. Then I think that's the way we went through with it.
Thank you. I think we were also speaking about this before. Like, one of the things that is fascinating about your trajectory is because in one way you embody the American dream as someone who moved from another part of the world and built a really successful company in Silicon Valley. Can you share a little bit about how that journey, how did you experience that journey? And would you have been where you are today if you hadn't moved to Silicon Valley?
I mean, you never know, right? I don't remember. I was reading a book that talked about, I think it was 0 to 1, that talks about all the big companies, and it's like, you could say that, those people, but it's very hard to do an A/B test because you can't take me and put me in Romania. Like, the person in Romania is different than me, so you can't A/B test people building good companies. So you don't know if it's them or the environment. I think it's probably all of it. I don't know if I would have. It's probably a lot less likely. I think it's not just me, right? I didn't build this company on my own. I met the right people. I'm probably going to start a new company next year, so we'll see. But even then, even if the next company is successful, I will have a bigger network than I did, and I know a lot of people and investors, and it's just like I've been there for so long. So I don't know. And I also feel like it's not like I went and built a company. Like I grew up, like I went to college in the States and I became an adult there. And I think I had been, when we started raising for Branch, I think I was 33 or something, 32. And so I had been in the States for over 10 years. So I don't know if like I'm the right. My co-founders were all American. Would I have been able to do it? I don't know. I also think the environment is different now. So Romania 20 years ago versus Romania now is very different. So it's a hard question. I hope so, but I think the more humble part of me thinks that a lot of what happened at Branch was definitely hard work, but a lot of it was also luck. I met the right people. I was in the right environment. I mean, even in US, would we be where we are had we started this company in Milwaukee? I don't know. There was a point, I think, I don't remember, it was like a few years in, I remember sitting in a board meeting, and I was like, I think one of our co-founders didn't go. So then everyone in that room went to Stanford GSB. And I was like, okay. Like there's something here. Every single investor, I think we were like Series C or something. And our lawyer also, like it was, I was like, this is crazy that like Stanford helped a lot. Like had we not gone there, had we be where we are, like I don't know what it was, There's so many different little things that help you to get where you are. So I don't think I can take the credit. But I also know so many amazing companies who started in Romania and in other places, and I know Daniel from UiPath, right? They succeeded. It took a little longer for them, but I think if you have grit and you really want to do it, you'll find a way. The path might be harder though, but I don't think it means. And I think starting in Romania today is much, much easier than it was, 20 years ago. I hope that helps.
Hi, Mada. I completely agree with what you said, and I want to kind of do a follow-up. What do you think founders here lack, or what do you think Romania needs to improve in order to facilitate the growth of startups and to make it easier for people like you to succeed here as well?
I think it's the market. I mean, personally, so Branch is all over the world, and if you ask me what is the region where I feel like we failed, it's definitely Europe. I think we opened offices, we tried like Berlin, we have a team in Poland, we opened an office in London, and we just could not. I think Europe is a very fragmented market, and like building bigger companies here is hard because every country wants their own. God, I just remember spending 2 weeks in France trying to sell Branch, and everyone was like, it needs to be in French, and you need this and this, and everyone was so particular, and I'm like, oh my God, like we should get out of France. Like I don't think we should try to sell in this country. And versus US, like it's a homogeneous, very large market. So if you start a company and you sell into the US market, you automatically have an advantage because once you get product market fit, you can grow. And then I would go to a place like India because they speak English and it's also a big market. You don't make so much money. But like I think there are places where it's like, and if you think about Latin America or companies starting in Brazil, like Nubank or whatever, like it's also a big homogeneous market. I think Europe is just so fragmented. So I would say like, and once you have a big company, those founders are more likely to have money and invest in others, so it builds the ecosystem. So I would say finding a way to expand the market beyond Europe, or finding a way to help sell in Europe in a more consistent manner, which I don't know. I could not figure it out at Branch. We're still struggling. It's our lowest, I would say it's our lowest margin and ROI region for us. Yeah.
And we have time for one more question.
You mentioned that the partners, you're treating them as employees, and you said you also take them on the culture discussions and everything. And actually, I had a question about culture. How do you define culture? How do you onboard the employees with that culture and the partners in your case? And especially as you grow, how do you keep it as the guardian of culture?
You missed my talk earlier.
I did.
Yeah, I mean, the way I define culture, so I read every book on culture, and I talked to a lot of early employees like Facebook and Google and Amazon. I think the way I define culture is the Ben Horowitz definition. What you do is who you are, I think it's the name of the book. But he says culture is what people do when there's no supervision. The way people behave when there's no supervision. So if you instill a certain like behavior and people do it if no one's looking, that means you have a good culture, right? Like when no one's looking, if there's no, will people get the more expensive flight or the cheaper flight if they know no one's tracking them? How will they decide? How will they deal with an incident? Like all of that is, I would say, culture. I think the way I talked through like 9 different levers. Starts with hiring. I think being very intentional about hiring is extremely important. We had something called a values interview that then morphed into a bar raiser, which I stole from Amazon. But this idea that you have to have someone outside the team that's hiring, who makes sure that like the person is additive to the culture of the company. The onboarding I stole from Facebook. So you used to be that people just kind of get onboarded and they meet with their manager, and now we have like classes of people, and the founders, we each did a session on like, I did one on culture, my co-founder Alex did one on the mission and vision of the company, and Mike did norms. So like we spent 30 to 45 minutes meeting all the new employees and then telling them about the business. And then it's the art around the office, the way we do promotions. We make sure that values and culture is one of the things. Like someone won't get promoted unless their manager has to make a case on why they're a good fit for the job, and then a case on why they're a good fit for the company. We have value awards, so people like nominate with stories. So then when we do the value awards, others hear the stories of people who got the award because they went above and beyond on one of our values. Celebrations. So I think like there's just like all these levers, but even with all these levers, you can like fully control culture. So I think I talk a lot about this idea that culture at the beginning is a dragon. It's a baby dragon, and you can tell it where to go. And when you're 500 people, it's a giant dragon, and you can only like nudge it, but you also can describe it, right? So if you're the culture person at a certain size, you can't fully control culture, but you can make sure the new employees understand it, and you're like actually true to what the culture actually is, even if that's not exactly what you necessarily wanted. I hope that helps. Thank you.
Thank you, Mada. How can the audience reach out to you if they have other questions?
On LinkedIn, and also my current email is mada@branch.io. I am probably I'm working on actually leaving Branch and starting something new next year, but for the rest of the year, I still have that email, so.
Nice. Let's keep in touch about something new.
Great.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.